Ahoy there, me hearties! My name is Salty, the Dockside Diesel, and you're listening to the Right on Track podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Right on Track, the podcast covering all things Thomas, trains, and more. My name is Em, and you'll be hearing my voice throughout today's installment, episode 67 of the podcast. Later on, you'll hear Lachlan talking to our special guest, Will James, on Model Train Corner. But first up, here's Tom Denham, with guest host Carty picking up where we left off on our Series 8 reviews.
G'day, and welcome to the episode reviews yet again. You've heard a bit of me already this season. You've heard probably too much of me, and that's why we bring other people on here. On today's review I brought back one of the older guest hosts that we had on. Not back in Series 7, but back in Series 6, we brought Carty on to give some thoughts on some of his favourite episodes. But we brought him back just for a bit of fun. Carty, how are you?
I am good. I sound congested because I'm recovering, this will date this episode, from COVID-19. But I am alive and well, and I'm excited to be here. So if you heard me in the last episode I was on, I probably sound a lot better than I do now. But I'm alive and well, and I'm very happy to be here.
I'm glad that's the case, and I'm glad that you've overcome the virus. But it's a reminder that this pandemic is still going. But it's a great excuse for us to binge watch a whole lot of Thomas the Tank channels. So we're reviewing two episodes from Series... I almost said Series 7, but we're reviewing two episodes from Series 8 today. Carty, can you spill the beans, spill the tea? Which episodes are we reviewing?
So today we have the two greatest episodes of all time. Edward the Great and Spick and Span. I don't know which order those actually come in because I don't quite keep up with the hit era stuff. But yeah, we're doing those two gems today. If
there's any episode greater, I think it's a lie, and I think it's in the title, Edward the Great, that it's so great that it's kind of both of them are in a bit of a league of their own.
Edward the Great is so good that YouTube blocks almost every upload of it.
You know, it's funny. When I was taking my notes for these episodes, I found the ones that was 60 frames per second, and I enjoyed it greatly.
Ooh, yeah, that's the way to watch it.
It is, much compared to the very cropped and grainy version of Spick and Span that I watched from you, which is the first episode that we're going to be looking at.
Ugh.
In the clip that you're about to hear, the engines find out about the railway inspector coming to Sodor, and all of the engines want to be looking their best for when the inspector finds them.
The railway inspector arrives today, the Fat Controller said. What's a railway inspectacles? Percy asked. Railway inspector, Gordon huffed. He comes to look at the railway every year. He checks everything is spick and span, said Thomas. This year he is to give a special prize to the best turned out engine, added the Fat Controller. So I want you all to look your best. A special prize? Puffed Thomas. I wonder if we could win, asked Percy. Ah, Gordon snorted. He's bound to give it to an express engine. Or one with big wheels, said Emily. I think he'll give it to a red engine, James beamed proudly. Don't listen to them, puffed Thomas. A really useful engine can look as grand as any engine.
One thing I love about sequence that we've seen and throughout this whole episode is that Emily is such a jerk throughout the whole thing. And I think like in other episodes, like she's very quick to be the nice one and who sticks up for the underdog. But right here, like pure vanity mode.
Yeah, I love how self-centered everyone is in this episode. Like this is the one episode where everyone's being so mean to Thomas and Percy for no good reason. Like, oh yeah, you're gonna get dirty, and it's like for the reboot that's trying to teach kids like how to behave. This episode is not the best to take morals from.
So in the episode Spick and Span, as we mentioned before, a railway inspector is coming to the island of Sodor to do what his title suggests, inspect the Sodor Railway. And he's going around with the Fat Controller, and they're, I guess, looking at all the things that make a railway tick, and eventually they get around to the engines themselves. And Thomas and Percy, being the engines they are, want to be good looking and shiny for the time when the railway inspector comes to find them. And in their quest to remain clean, Thomas gets dirty, Percy gets dirty, and every time they want to get washed, either Emily, James, or Gordon are at the washdown, and they have to come back and then go back, and it becomes quite a bit of mayhem for them. But Gordon, Emily, and James get their comeuppance in the end.
Oh, they do. In a rather a sequence that probably has not aged all that gracefully.
The one thing I love about this sequence, after the railway inspector and the Fat Controller and the porters rock up, Gordon blows coal dust all over them. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about the eyes that are so strange and off-putting. Did they edit that somehow?
I'm looking at this frame right now, and it definitely looks modified, because there's no way that he can be covered in soot and have his eyes look that clean. Or all of those guys have their eyes look that clean. And it's jarring.
So we skipped a bit ahead. We've given you a bit of a teaser of what's to come in the episode, but I think one thing that's to be said about this episode, and I think you touched on it, this episode kind of goes against about what this new era of Thomas is teaching. And I think in that respect, it kind of feels like something that should belong in the series 6 or 7 region of the show.
Yeah, everyone's... There are not a whole lot of episodes that are like this either in the hit era, where everyone is just mean to each other. I could see this being a season 5 episode. Like, it's almost right out of that season, sans the digital cinematography and the 8-minute runtime.
One of the things I love is that I think Gordon and James particularly are very true in character form here. Like, both of them are, like, absolutely horrible to the little engines on a daily basis. And we will kind of, like, wash clean from that at the beginning of Series 8, but it kind of comes back here.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that return to form. I don't know if that was intentional. I know Mark Seal wrote this episode, but I don't know. I really couldn't tell you much else about him as a writer, but it was nice to see that sort of return to form there, even if it's just for one episode.
And I think one detail that we have to talk about is that the pushing of the Emily agenda is very present in this episode. I think they went out of their way to kind of take Emily out of her character to kind of shoehorn her into this script. Do you feel that as well?
It's not something I've ever felt like, oh, Emily feels shoehorned here necessarily. When I watch season 8, I understand that Emily's going to be a big part of it because, you know, they're trying to naturally push for the female character, which I think is fine. At least in this, I didn't feel it was I don't know. I never looked at it like that. At least growing up.
It's funny because I didn't see that either, but I think, like, as we've come to, I guess, kind of look back on these episodes now without the rose-tinted glasses, we do notice that Emily's general character is that she's nice. She'll stick up for other engines and she'll kind of do the right thing by her and by the larger crowd. So it feels very strange for her to kind of be very self-centered, but I kind of dig it as well.
Yeah, I mean, anything is better than, you know, what they did with her in the CGI series.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other conversation, in my opinion, but...
Lightly touching on that, I think Thomas has this kind of trap of rebooting itself so much that it kind of relies on the same tropes of the previous reboot that it initially did, with saying, we're going to have more female characters, we're going to have a more diverse cast, but it was kind of stuff that they were trying to do before anyway, so it's kind of a history repeats itself almost.
Yeah, whereas, and one nice thing I like about here is, and I keep harkening back to, well, this feels semi-classic because big engines are mean to the small engines. Small engines are trying to prove themselves. This is exactly kind of how the show started. You know, it's like the Tender Engine trilogy from season 1, a little bit. I see some parallels there. Granted, it's under the hit era look and writing tropes, but there's still some there's still some classic elements here, and I think that's why I like this episode so much, because it's a very typical Thomas story, which is nice.
It is, and I think each character kind of gets their moment here on their own, because what happens throughout the story is that Thomas and Percy are working at the quarry, but Thomas is very particular about whenever he gets a bit of dust on him or a bit of rock, and he decides to go to the washdown at Marin Station as soon as he can. And each time he goes, he visits James, Emily, and Gordon, and they each kind of have their moment to say, oh, I'm going to be the best, and they kind of pepper themselves up. And then Thomas goes, oh, well, I best go back to work and help out Percy. But each time he goes back, another engine is there.
Yeah, and it's nice to see the washdown included. I know that's like such a small thing, but like thinking of like Trouble with Mud, Percy's Chocolate Crunch, like those are two of my favorite episodes. And for whatever reason, a lot of my favorite episodes have this theme of, well, you can't get a washdown. I don't know if that's something that can be studied, but it's something I need to look into now.
You just love episodes where everybody gets filthy.
If Percy's not covered in chocolate, Gordon's not covered in mud, James Gordon and Emily are not covered in black coal suit. That's a no-go from me.
So just quickly, what's your opinion on Wash Behind Your Buffers?
Hot take. Every single Narrowgauge episode from the hit era is awful.
I'm thinking of that one scene where Madge, the snub-nosed
she
Laurie,
shoots the mud.
Yeah, and I don't think it's aged well. It looks very questionable by today's standards.
Yeah, it looks like she's had too many wings, food poisoning, and it just
too many curries.
Ugh.
Yeah. Anyway. So after Gordon, Emily, and James have been washed and cleaned, looking the absolute best, they decide to pick the greatest spot of sun in the yard, which happens to be at the coaling plant. And they're looking around, trying to see where they can get the best spot in this area. And carelessly, James pushes a flatbed, which triggers the coal hopper, and coal dust goes everywhere.
I would really love to know whose thought process it was. And you're thinking, like, hey, you know where it'd be really great to go now that we're clean? The coaling plant. I can't think of a better spot to go than to the damn coaling plant. What could go wrong?
Yeah, I can imagine it's probably going to be the newbie. So maybe Emily or Emily's driver, because like they have no idea, and James and Gordon are kind of like, oh, okay, we'll listen to her.
Like I understand it's for plot convenience, so that they can all get musty and whatever and dirty, but it's like, yeah, we just got clean. Yeah, let's go to the quarry. Let's go to the docks.
It's always at the bit where like something bad is going to happen, and I think this is more than a coincidence in Thomas the Tank Engine.
It's like go to the shed. No, this is the wrong place. But of course, the story has to happen.
This is true. If they were Henry, they would have gone in the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So coal dust goes everywhere, and the engines get covered. As we alluded to before, the inspector and the fat controller and the porters get covered as well. And then, just in the nick of time, Thomas and Percy, shiny and clean, come right around the corner.
And they get that weird little... It looks like rubber?
It does, yeah.
I don't know what they made that out of, but it looks kind of delicious at the same time. I want to take a bite out of it.
What would it taste like?
Well, depending on what they made it on, you might not even taste it. It might kill you immediately.
Yeah.
It might be so bitter.
I wouldn't try.
But it's they're given this cute, delicious-looking little ribbon, and of course, in the end, little engines can do big things. And they win the competition, which is a classic Thomas trope that I'm always here for.
I love that you said the thing. You put the thing in there.
Yeah.
So, all's well as ends well. I would have thought it would have been, like, by no means of the hit era this would have happened, but I would have laughed, like, if... Because we see no one else in this story. Like, the main characters in the story are the only engines that we see. I think we see Henry maybe at the start, but that's it. I would have just, like, lost it if maybe, I don't know, Stepney or Bill and Ben just kind of came around the corner and just kind of were like the ones that took the place, and then Thomas and Percy come around and go, wait, no, that was our cue.
Yeah, it's a shame that season 8 didn't experiment with, like, I don't think these are questionable characters or experimental characters, but, you know, obviously they were trying to, like, return to, like, the main core cast. But I think Bill and Ben would have been perfect for this episode, thinking on that now.
Yeah. If I was to swap characters out for this episode, I would put Bill and Ben in the place of Thomas and Percy, and in the place of Emily, I'd put Henry, because I feel like the big three, you kind of need to have them together.
And yeah, you could even, if we were thinking really hard about this, you could sort of tie into the fact that Henry already doesn't like Bill and Ben from Percy Takes the Plunge, so that could be a nice little narrative arc.
It's continuity, it all weaves together. So, looking at this episode, spick and span, as we said before, one of the greatest episodes of Thomas the Tank Engine, period. Out of a 10, what are you going to rank it?
Oh god. Because it's hit, I'm going to automatically deduct 3 points. And I'm gonna say 6.5, because it's good. This is one of the better hit area episodes in my opinion. I don't know if I'm allowed to do a half rating.
Yeah, I think the most ridiculous score I've given is a 6.5.2. So you can give a half.
Okay, well I'll do a 6.6 to be contrarian. So 6.6 because this feels classic. But unfortunately, it is muddled down by the extended pacing, which doesn't really help the episode, in my opinion. And unfortunately, the visuals of this season are just very, very bad in comparison to what had just come before it.
Just touching on it briefly, because in the UK and Australia, we had Michael Angelis narrating these seasons, and in the States... you would have had Michael Brandon for these ones. What was... explain that to me. Like, what was his voice like for this era?
It was just very brash and not soothing, because, you know, you get Alec Baldwin for season 5. You get the Magic Guard movie, and then, you know, we get Michael Angelis for one DVD, and when I heard Michael Angelis' voice for the first time, I was like, oh, that's a really good voice. I like that. Only for him to disappear for the next DVD, and then finally, once we get the new reboot and you pop in the season 8 tape for the first time, and you're like, why does it look so smooth? What's going on? Why does the music sound different? And the narrator doesn't even sound good? I think that's, you know, the UK and Australia got it very lucky where the transition was not as hard because you have the narrator who you've had since season 3, whereas we had a whole new narrator, and it just... We're absolute worst narrator. Nothing against Michael Brandon himself, but he is the worst narrator of all time.
It's funny, like, when you think someone's going to be a good narrator, but, like, there may be flaws here and there, because, like, I know I've seen Michael Brandon in other works, like he's appeared in Doctor Who and various other things, and he's a good actor. He can act his chops off, but and I felt similar. No offense if you're a fan of this film, but I felt quite similar watching Pierce Brosnan in Great Discovery. Like, I loved Bond, and I think that was kind of the thing that got me back into the Thomas thing after kind of stepping out after this season. But I felt like looking back at it, there was something about the delivery that was just a bit off at times.
No, absolutely. And I say this as a huge Pierce Brosnan Bond fan. Watching him in Great Discovery, like, that's the easiest way to put a person to sleep, because he's not engaging, and he's too quiet, and it just doesn't work. And Michael Brandon and Pierce Brosnan are both great actors in their respective, you know, shows and movies, but there's something about sitting down in a studio and reading a Thomas story where their voice does not lend itself to that Thomas story, and if there's science behind that, I'd love to see it. But it's a shame because we had Michael Brandon for far too long.
You did, and I'm sorry. I'm currently watching through all the US dubs of the show from series 1, and I think I'm up to about series 6, and I'm kind of slowly dreading getting to the hit era.
Oh god, yeah, season 7 in its US dub over here is rough. I'm praying for your sanity.
Jumping back to our discussion before, so Carty, you gave Spick and Spam a 6.6. I'm going to give it a 6 as well. I think there are definitely classic tropes from this story, like the tender engines versus small engines rivalry, and it kind of has that glimmer of something familiar. But I think this episode does look very bland, I think, in itself. And I think like this whole kind of season, I think, was a palate cleanser, but without the cleansing. So I think being hit, I think I have to kind of go, okay, 6 from me. But I think that's pretty generous at this time in the show's current state. So moving forward, we've gone from the first greatest ever episode of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends to the next greatest episode, so great that it has great in the title, and that's Edward the Great. And in the clip that we're going to show, Spencer, the boastful silver engine, has come to Knapford Station, and he's showing off to all the Fat Controller's engines about how great he is, and there may be a special job for one of the engines.
The Fat Controller spoke to the engines. Spencer will take the Duke and Duchess to their summer house. Another engine will take their furniture. The Fat Controller's engines saw their chance for a race. Please, sir, said Thomas, Percy, Gordon and James, all together. May I go? You all have other work to do, boomed the Fat Controller. Edward will take the furniture. James and Gordon groaned. Fancy sending a back engine to do an express engine's job, sniffed Gordon. He'll lose the race and let the old railway down, said James. Thomas and Percy were cross. Edward was their friend. Spencer has a bigger boiler, said Thomas, but that just means more hot air. An Honest Steamie can beat a pouty puffer any day, added Percy. Edward set off, slow and steady. Will do my best, he puffed.
Already, like, looking at, like, the way that this story is going to go ahead, like, if you're smart enough, you know this is a classic, like, retelling of the tortoise and the hare trope that's been used since the dawn of time. And I think one credit I will give, with the characters that they've selected for this, I'm kind of content with who they've got.
I think if you're going to do this episode with, like, the Steam team, yeah, you pick the two. I'm really glad I didn't do Edward and Gordon, because that would have been too easy. And we've already got, the Series 6 episode with them. The only weird thing about this is that they quite literally did this story. I think they even called it The Tortoise and the Hare with, what is it, the Jack and the Pack episodes?
That's right,
yeah.
It was Buster, Max, and Monty.
And it's so weird to see them do it again, like, literally 2 years later. I'm also mixed. A lot of people feel like Diesel should have been, like, a one-off character or something after, after Diesel does it again in the Duck and Diesel trilogy. I think Spencer should have been a one-off character, and seeing him here on Sodor again is a little weird, because I think Gordon and Spencer could have been, like, the perfect ending point for him, just to show he's pompous, and they don't give Spencer any depth in this episode, and they until Here Are the Rails is the only time they ever give him depth. So any Spencer episode in the new series just doesn't really work for me, and this is one of those. It's just weird to see them do Tortoise and the Hare twice so close together.
Yeah, and I think, like, one of the interesting kind of things going on in the background at this stage is that these were done by two completely different teams, and I think that version of the Tortoise and the Hare hadn't had any kind of official release them. But you would think that the people who'd work on the show would go and look back in the catalogue, even of stuff that wasn't released, and go, maybe we should do an exact retelling of a story that's been recorded less than 2 years ago.
Right, yeah. But then you've got, what was it? I hate to jump between timelines here, but you've got Edward the Very Useful Engine, and then you've got Old Reliable Edward, which are the exact same episode when you get down to it.
Exactly,
granted, that's like a 20-ish year gap or whatever, so it's a little bit more understandable. But come on, Abby Grant. I love you to death, I really do. You're an incredible person, but come on, do your homework.
I like what you said about like the one-off characters, because I feel like most people would agree that some of the best characters in this whole franchise are the one-off characters, and I often kind of lean towards the villains. Like you think of George and Bulstrode and Class 40, Derek. They're all characters that you only ever really see in a blink of an eye or once or twice, and I think that's kind of one of the best things about them.
Right, and because they show up, Derek is cool because, he shows up once and he has issues and he's kind of sent away immediately. And so the potential for a return is ripe. Whereas, think if Spencer had disappeared after season 7 and it was reintroduced for Here Are the Rails, that would have been an incredible reintroduction for him. But we've come to expect, he comes to Sodor every summer with the Duke and Duchess, etc., etc. We know he's fast. But at least, he's in character here. He's a dick to Edward, which, that's exactly what you would expect from him. So props to Abby Grant for keeping him in his season 7 persona, I suppose.
One thing I do love about this story that I think sets up, possibly one of the longest arcs in the whole show, is that at the beginning of the episode, Spencer's driver tells Spencer that he has broken Gordon's speed record. And I think this kind of really surfaces as an arc when we get to the Brenner era. Like, we see Gordon and Spencer kind of showing off of one another in King of the Railway, which I think personally is like one of the best kind of presences that we've seen of these two together, when they're kind of going at each other and then they're threatened by two engines who are even better than them. But then it kind of all comes closing towards the season 21 episode Confused Coaches, when they decide to kind of call it a day and just put aside grievances. I think like having something that's kind of mentioned so early back and then pick it up again and like play it across multiple seasons. I don't know.
And it does make you wonder, like, I understand why they chose Edward for this episode. It makes a lot of sense. But imagine if this episode were centered between Gordon and Spencer, it might be a little bit more meaningful, because they're both fast. So I think there's more stakes because you don't know who could actually win. With Edward, you automatically know Edward's going to win because he's the good guy. So what's going to happen. Right. If you have Gordon as the main character pulling the furniture or whatever, and you sort of see them bond again, it could be almost a spiritual sequel to Gordon and Spencer, which I think would have been very nice. If you're going to bring him back, keep him and Gordon interacting, because there's a bond, there's an unspoken bond there. Of course, it's like you said, it's not really touched on until King of the Railway and season 17 and beyond. But it would have been nice to see that in the model series.
I see this going two ways, and I really like that you kind of touched on the spiritual bond. I kind of see if Gordon was the one to take the furniture, I feel like he would totally get full of himself and get into an accident of some kind, going too fast and realizing Spencer's going to go fast as well. And now that I've learned my lesson, I can have one up on him by carefully going in these places. So I could almost see it going that way as well.
Yeah, and while we're thinking on like how this episode could have worked better, Gordon had to save Spencer last time. Wouldn't have been, if this is like a sequel to Gordon and Spencer, wouldn't it have been kind of amazing and really sweet to see Spencer save Gordon this time?
Just tie that present with a bow and send it off to Hit Entertainment.
Come on, Abby Grant, we're doing your job for you.
We've spoken about how great this episode could have been, but the episode that we have in front of us is a very different kettle of fish. So, Carty, would you like to tell everybody what happens in the actual version of Edward the Great, the greatest episode of Thomas and Friends?
This is one I'm not all super familiar with, but I have seen it many times. Is so Spencer's there, and he's taking the Duke and Duchess to see their new summer house, as he does in almost every episode that Spencer comes up in. And so they have to get their furniture to the summer house, because why would you go to a house that's not furnished? I've done that myself. It's not fun. And so all these engines want a chance to take the furniture and to show that they are faster than Spencer, because Spencer, of course, comes in and is boasting. And in a weird turn of events, the Fat Controller says, Edward, you should, I'll let you take this. All the engines are busy. And of course, the bigger engines are like, "Oh, no! Don't let this guy take it. He's gonna lose the race. There's no way this is gonna work out." But of course, Edward and Spencer take off, and Edward is struggling through every which terrain he finds himself on. He goes to Gordon's Hill, and of course, he has trouble getting up that. He has to stop and take a rest. And Spencer obviously knows that this is happening because he understands Edward is older. And at one point just comes to a complete stop. So the Duke and Duchess, I think they're having tea and cake at one point.
Yeah. And we see the greatest return of the greatest Series 4 character ever. The refreshment lady.
Oh my god. I almost forgot. Jeez.
How can you forget the greatest returnee of all time ever? We saw her in the last season, but we see her again here.
Good for her that she's still thriving.
She's still living her best life, making tea and cakes.
Getting left behind. What do you mean by leaving me behind? For those of you who are familiar with the US stuff. Anyways, so Spencer stops, thinking, okay, well, Edward's slow as molasses, whatever. But if I'm remembering right, he falls asleep. He does, yeah. The Duke is taking photos of the countryside, and he decides to sleep. And he's like, "Oh, we can buy time." Which, I mean, God, if he's that confident, what does that say about Edward? Good God. So eventually, the Duke and Duchess are ready to go back, and Spencer is not waking up. Eventually he does, but when he does wake up, he can see that Edward is ahead of him and going actually towards the summer house, and he realizes that he has lost the game.
Oh no.
In typical tortoise in the hare fashion, we've all heard this story. You get cocky, you take a nap and on the track, you're disobeying Rule 55. And you get beaten.
Can't do it, it's Rule 55!
Wilbert would hate this story.
He would. He'd be spinning in his grave, as the fandom love to say.
So yeah, Edward gets there, and he has won the race, and I think the quote is, he's pride of Sodor, the Sodor Railway, which they use that quote a lot in the new season.
It was strange, wasn't it? Like, he said he thinks, he feels like he was the pride of Sodor Railway, which is, I don't know, like, there's something very strange about that wording.
Which, I mean, I would hope Sodor celebrates Pride Month. I think that is a progressive island, so I'd like to think that happens. I'm not saying...
They do.
I'm not going to say those two things are connected, but if they are, Edward... good for him. Love wins.
What I would have loved to have seen, like, after this sequence was, like, maybe Spencer going, like, good work, you got there first, and, like, shaking buffers on it, so to speak. But just go straight to the roll call song.
Yeah, he doesn't... Spencer doesn't even show up at the end.
Yeah, that's it. That's the story.
Which, it's like, you would think when you have 8 minutes to tell a story, you might actually... have a solid ending, because in the classic series there were so many times where the episodes would end kind of abruptly. I mean, that was just sort of the downside of telling a good story in 4.5 minutes, whereas here, yeah, it would have been nice to see some sort of interaction. It seems we're just rewriting this episode, which
we are.
Once again, Abby Grant, if you're listening to this, please don't take it personally. We understand this was so many years ago. For a tortoise and the hare concept episode, it doesn't I feel like it could have been done better. I think even the actual Jack episode handles the resolution better. But it's been a while since I've seen that.
Yeah, I think if I was to choose between the two, I'd take the Jack in the Pack one, because I think we get to see a classic, I guess, kind of concept of it with Buster and Max and Monty, and I think the execution of that was just done a little bit better.
I think the one nice thing this episode has going for it is I always like seeing Spencer at Knapford with all the other engines. I don't know why, but that visual is very stimulating for me. Because you have a blue engine, you have a red engine, you have a green engine, and then you have a silver engine who stands out completely. Streamlined, too. So it just looks so nice. So at least, I mean, I understand the visuals in season... I said this earlier, the visuals in season 8 aren't wonderful, but right here, they're pretty nice just because of the color differences between the engines. Other than that, though, the digital camera work does sort of botch it a bit.
One thing I do like about the difference of Spence between Series 7 and Series 8 is that he's noticeably shinier. I don't know if they got a new model for him or if they redid the paintwork, but something about him looks... I think he's more of like a matte kind of color in Series 7.
He does look a lot better, and it's funny you say that because they do use a Season 7 shot from Gordon and Spencer.
I do, yeah.
And they add a little, sparkle to it, like a digital effect, which I think was very cute because they understand he looks totally different. And it's funny you say that because when he comes back in Season 11, he looks even more shiny. What are they doing to this guy?
They're just buffering him up just every time he's about to go on set.
I imagine, holding him. He's so slippery.
It slides out of your hands onto the set.
Jesus.
I don't know, the more I think about it, if I could, be the custodian of any Thomas prop, I think one of them would have to be, Series 8 or 11 Spencer. I don't know, something about that would be really cool.
Yeah, and Spencer just as a prop in and of itself looks incredible. And I say this, I used to own a Hornby Spencer once at one point, and that was just so beautiful to look at. There's something, it's just how sleek he is and the color. I think if I could choose a prop, besides Diesel 10, Spencer would be the prop to have.
Oh, you go Diesel 10. Oh.
Only just so I could have Pinchy pick up my phone and hand it to me.
That's fantastic. So, Edward the Great, I think we've covered mostly everything that we can cover with this story. We've pulled it apart, we've rewritten it, we've told the actual story that happens, and we've compared it to its counterpart from its spin-off. What would you rate, I almost said Jack in the Pack, but what would you rate Edward the Great out of... Actually, no, what would you rate the Jack in the Pack spin-off out of 10?
I have a lot of nostalgia for Jack in the Pack, so I'm going to give that a solid 10 out of 10 because I'm blinded by nostalgia.
Oh, good boy.
However,
I
Edward the Great, I will not be so kind to. I think Edward the Great, I would say, probably a 2 out of 10. I don't know. This episode never stuck with me as a kid.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to lean on you there. I think I'm going to be a bit more generous. I'm going to go 3 because it's got Spencer. I think that kind of boosts 1 point up a little bit. But I think everything else kind of falls a little bit flat for me.
This is, out of all the episodes of Season 8, I think this is definitely one of the weaker ones. And, it's even worse than some of the Christmas episodes. And Christmas episodes in the Hit era can be really bad.
But Carty, they have tinsel for Thomas.
Oh my god, you're right.
That makes everything better.
But... It is weird, though, and I was just looking at the Wikia trivia here for a second. Abby Grant said this is one of her favorite episodes because it's centered around Edward. And you know what? For that, because I love Abby Grant, I'll give it a 2.5.
Oh, that's generous right there. You're hearing it here. This is generosity at its peak. Carty, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a while since you've been on, so what have you been up to since we've last had you on the podcast?
So I'm still working on this little documentary. It's called An Unlikely Fandom. Just editing now. Did a test screening recently, went over very well. Just adding the final touches and getting it ready. A lot of magical, wink wink surprises. in store. And outside of that, I am doing a lot of freelance filmmaking work, and you would be surprised that I have a tie to Thomas, because all my Twitter account is just me talking about films and filmmaking. But thankfully, I have... Hopefully I can do more Thomas stuff soon, and this is why I like doing this podcast, because it keeps me one leg in the door with the community.
We got to keep you in somehow, whether it's reviewing poorly aged era episodes, or showing your friends your Thomas the Tank channels, or reminding us how great the Magic Railroad is. We got to keep involved somehow.
Oh yeah, no. If there's one last thing I can say, is that Magic Railroad is the greatest film of all time. I say that as a film historian and filmmaker and film student. You have to trust me now.
We'll get you on for a full video analysis one day.
Oh my god.
In the meantime, that was our reviews of Spick and Span and Edward the Great. And in the next episode, you will hear me again with another guest host. We'll be reviewing Squig, Rattle and Roll, and the other greatest episode of all time, Thomas and the Circus. It's going to be great. But in the meantime, I've been Denham.
And I have been Carty.
Have a good one.
Hi, I'm Mike O'Donnell, one of the composers of the original Thomas the Tank Engine theme, and I'm here to tell you that I have released a selection of re-recorded themes and songs from the classic shows in a series of albums called the Engine Themes. These albums include a variety of classic themes and songs from the original TV series, as well as a few new compositions. You can purchase these albums on CD or digital download, as well as posters and pin badges. Have a look online at modmusic.co.uk. And for a special offer for Right On Track listeners, you can use the special code ROT20 for a 20% discount on all digital downloads. Be sure to enter the code when making your purchase. Thank you for your support and happy listening. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Tom and Carty. Despite being a very different season from the Golden Era, it's interesting to hear the different perspectives our guests provide. It's now time for our musical interlude, where we will hear Les Trois Pierres Blanches, a cover brought to us by Star Tom. Thank you, Star Tom, for that fun Thomasified cover of Les Trois Pierres Blanches. We enjoy hearing all the music in the fandom, so if you have any suggestions for future musical interludes, be sure to send us an email at rightontrackthomas@gmail.com. Next up, we have our resident model train guru, Lachlan Kyle, who is chatting to another guru of sorts in the Australian train and model railway community, Will James, in today's instalment of Model Train Corner.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Model Train Corner. We have another interview this episode, and for the next episode, we will be talking with Australian model railway YouTuber and photographer Will James. A little bit of an introduction to Will James. He's like I said, model railway YouTuber, and he's only been on the scene for about a year. And before that, he did, or still does, photography. So that's taking photos of trains and professional photography. And you can go onto his YouTube channel and you can still see what he was up to back, before he got into the model railway scene with model railway news and his layout updates and such. He'd just go train chasing like any other, I guess any other railway YouTuber. Like they plonk themselves out somewhere in Victoria, Melbourne, and they just capture movements of any freight trains or special trains that might come about. Another note to make about this interview is that a lot of the information may be outdated or no longer relevant because this was recorded back in January of 2022. It is now, according to the date on my computer, the 28th of September 2022. So we're out by a long shot. Between then and now, Will has reached 5,000 subscribers, so big ups to him. Congratulations. And I'd say he's arguably done more for the Australian model railway scene than anyone else has ever. We're quite a niche little section of the model railway scene. So, Australian model railways as a whole is niche, but Victorian model railways is even smaller than that. And he's done so much to get it up and out there. He's been recognised by people in America, I'm pretty sure. He's being recognised by people all over the world. And congratulations to him, that's all I can really say. Another note to make about this interview is this was the first one I conducted back in January. So you will hear some pretty poor quality because I recorded this on my phone and Will recorded this on a proper mic. I didn't have a proper mic until a few months later, and that's probably why my recording sounds so much better now compared to back then. You'll see though. Every time Will talks, it sounds like paper rustling or something. But anyway, let's get on to the interview. Let's talk to Will James, and let's have some fun. Will James, how are we?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad.
Excellent to hear.
We got anything happening? How are we? Talk about yourself.
At the moment, everything's busy. We just had our first model railway exhibition for the year, which was Warrnambool. The video came out yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this. That might have been some time ago or very recently. But so we're not back to normal, but on the model railway scene, I guess we are. I can go to the model railway club, I can run my trains, I can go and converse with my friends. And we went down to Warrnambool the other day, which, for reference, is about 3 hours from Melbourne, on the coast towards South Australia, I guess that way, although you wouldn't go to South Australia via Warrnambool. So that was good. So we're back to normal-ish. And that's what's been going on lately. And then just planning, because we're still in the early throes of January, just planning out what's going to happen this year, where we're going and what we're doing. Yeah, definitely keen myself to get around to some more exhibitions this year. That's something that's on the list. So you should be. I ran into you're in the Ballarat Model Railway Club. Yeah, that's right, yeah. And I had a big chat to the chaps from Ballarat the other day. Did you see them down there? Layout. Yeah, had a big chat. Yeah, that's cool. There'll be there was a plug they're selling another exhibition layout. So they had a few questions whether I'd be interested, which unfortunately I'm not. I don't really have the room for that, but very large N scale layout. Even though the idea behind N scale is space saving, yeah, but wasn't to be. So, first question: what was your introduction into trains and model railways? So, I guess like most people, it was family. So, Dad was into trains, and he'd take us along to see them go past. Now, Dad wasn't like the biggest gunzel in the world, like I kind of am, but yeah, he'd take us to see. I've got footage of 766, like doing Geelong shuttles in 1996 and all these other little bits and pieces, and we'd move to the country and we'd watch the freight trains. But then, I guess on the model aspect, and I guess it keeps in theme with your podcast here, we grew up with VHS tapes of Thomas, and we had, we had probably a dozen Thomas tapes, and I think they're still at my parents' house in Ballarat. And yeah, they're the Ringo Starr narrated ones, and I think those two factors got me into it, and then I got out of it. Probably from when I was 18 through to late 20s. I decided, it just wasn't cool, wasn't the thing. And then one day I saw an ad for, I think it was the Caulfield exhibition or the Steam Rail Open Day. I can't remember if it was that or Sandown. And I said, well, might go along. Like, I used to be into that. We'll go have a look.
Yeah,
and then now we're here.
Yeah.
A few years later, found what I liked about it and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of facets of the hobby that I really enjoy, and it all just came together.
It's funny because that seems to be the one thing that everyone has in common, at least from my point of view, because I've kind of gone through that motion as well. Like when I was a kid, I liked Thomas the Tank Engine. I'd collect all the little metal toys and whatnot. And then you move on to something else as you get older, as a teenager and whatnot. And I think it was as I was finishing up high school, actually. By that time, I already had one or two model trains, but I picked it up again. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to learn more about this, and then that's kind of how I got myself back into it. So nice. A lot of people, from what I've heard, have sort of a similar story. There's not usually people like trains all their life, but each to their own, I guess.
Absolutely. I think something I found lately is that I get a lot of messages from people who may not have even had any interest, and they're not going to go and chase trains or anything like that, but they're interested in other aspects of the hobby, be it electrical wiring or the DCC programming. That's something that attracts people for a totally different reason, or operations. I mean, people who love board games, technical board games, really like operations because it's so involved. But they don't care about the scenery. They don't care about, how many rivets are where and if this was the correct era for which carriages should be which locomotive. They want to play it as a game. And that's a whole another aspect that I think gets overlooked quite a lot. So I don't think you necessarily even have to be into trains to get into model trains, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. There's some sort of mass appeal to it. I reckon every time, a train has come into Ballarat Station, half the people there aren't even train enthusiasts. They just go, oh my God,
absolutely.
Steam train. We're going to go have a look at that. Yeah.
It's a weird phenomenon, how, especially with steam or heritage, wooden carriages, you open the window. I remember years ago, I took a mate, we'd come down from Ballarat to Melbourne for the day, and I was like, look, I know we're going to go do this, but I want to go and look at the steam rail running Essendon shuttles between Essendon and Broadmeadows. I said, without telling him, I just went and bought a ticket. I was like, cool, we're going to go ride it. We're just going to get on it. I've already paid for it. Get on. And he's like, I really don't want to. And I'm like, no. It'll be good. And the second I got in, it was they were using the Tate set with a push-pull with two steam locomotives. And I opened the window and stuck my head out. And he's like, wait, you can do that? I'm like, yeah, it's great. That's part of the appeal. And he's like, oh, yeah, I get it now. And you're going along and wind and noise and sound. It's a whole thing. And yeah, he had a great day. And I think that's something, it's a weird thing. But even then, you look at people who come out to see a train, Ballarat's a good example. Oh, I hear a steam train's coming. Oh, we'll go and wave at it. We'll take the kids and wave to the people on the steam train. That's such a weird thing of the waving. I don't know. I might be digressing here, but it's true. Trains have got this weird phenomenon that happens, that attracts all these people, and everyone gets excited. It's weird.
Yeah.
Because you don't get it with other things. You don't go and see a truck and you're like, oh, mass transport, or I don't know, I'm not into buses and I know people who are, and that's all good, but I don't get excited to go see a bus. Maybe a ship or an aeroplane, but
Yeah. Like for example, you have car swap meets and whatnot. It's all usually just car enthusiasts.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, it is. But you have a steam train trip and it's families from all walks of life. And
People who wouldn't
just
even
people,
know
like,
what the train is they're riding behind.
Oh, absolutely. Like the other week, a couple of weeks ago, more than a couple of weeks ago, I caught the Sandringham shuttles, and I shared a compartment with a couple who just wanted something to do. They didn't really care about the train or anything about it. They were just not, I'd say normal. They were just everyday people who were just, we thought it'd be a good idea to book a ticket this morning and ride it back and forth. I'm like, sweet, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Now, how good's this? Like, yeah, it's odd in a good way.
Yeah. So you're into photography. So you're like you mentioned earlier, you're a gunsel, and gunsels usually, take photos of trains and whatnot. So tell us about your photography and your train spotting adventures, I suppose.
It's something that definitely goes hand in hand. So when I lived in Ballarat, I was a working photographer, and I had my own business, and I was doing a lot of editorial. I was doing your nightclubs. I was doing everything that would pay me. So I was shooting babies, 21st engagements, everything like that, and it was fine. I did it, I guess, as a hobby for a while, and then I went out my own for a few years, and then I got poached by a large electronic retailer in Australia to come and be a camera specialist, which got me out of doing jobs I didn't particularly enjoy doing. And then I think, when I started getting back into it all, it made sense. Like, I like photography, I like that aspect, and photography's there. I've got all the gear. Go and take some photos. And then they started getting, this is probably, I want to say 5 years ago, maybe a bit longer. It was, people were like, oh, these are good. And I was like, oh, sweet, thanks. And then it just started going there, and then I got on the cover of Newsrail a few times, and a few articles in there, and a couple of the centerfold spreads, and same with some AMRA. If you're in the Australian Model Railway Association, we have I think it's once every 3 months a magazine comes out, and they were getting photos in there, and I was like, oh, publish work, like, of a subject that I actually liked. And then I realized I had the camera gear to do videos and do all that thing, and just kind of snowballed from there. So now, I mean, majority of work I do is railway related, and I wish it was more, but I still have to work a full-time job, and my job is selling camera gear. My title is camera specialist, and that's fun. I like doing that. I like helping people out and getting them the right tool, I guess, for what they want to do. But I also like making, like, the videos. Like, I love everything about it, like, as a learning kind of thing. And I like all that aspect, and it all just kind of meshed together really well. And it still is, like, it's all still a learning curve, but especially the video aspect. I'm not a videographer by any means, but I like doing it all, and it all just makes sense.
Yeah, more or less living the dream. All your hobbies, all in one.
I think I'd be living the dream if it was my job. Like, if I could just say to my work, hey, it's been good, see you later, and do it like some people I look up to from overseas, they do, and that'd be great. But I guess at the end of the day, I got to be realistic. Maybe one day, but at the moment, look, it's a fun hobby that gets me out and about. Like, it means I'm not stuck at home. I like that aspect. I ran into someone the other day who asked me, it's like, what do you like about it? Like, do you like making the model railway news videos? And I said, look, they're great. I like giving everyone the news and making a free video for everyone, so they don't have to, it's there. It's a visual medium. You don't have to read. You don't have to do anything. You get more information. That's great. I actually don't necessarily like it as much as just getting in the car and driving and chasing trains or going to an exhibition. Like, that's what I really, really enjoy. But I guess at the end of the day, it's still just a hobby.
Yeah, the hobby. That's it. The secondary part of it. But, like, you're there for the actual subject of the video, and the video is just kind of what you make of it afterwards, and you show off to everyone else. Yeah,
absolutely. Like that was a point of, like, getting into now, like, exhibition videos. It's like, well, not everyone can go, especially at the moment. Why not show them what happened or what's going on, and try and give them as much detail as I can, not just a couple of words on the screen like, oh, this is Barry's layout and it's in HO. Like, try and give a bit more, and that's something I've got to practice and learn more of, and that aspect of it.
I think with these interviews, this might become a bit more of an obligatory question, especially for people like yourself. But do you have a favourite heritage railway or favourite locomotive, something like that?
So a couple of years ago, I went to the Festiniog and Welsh Highlands Railway, and that by far was probably one of the best I've ever seen. I got a soft spot for narrow gauge, and I stayed in I always say the name wrong, Port Maddock, even though it's written as like Port Madog.
Yes, yeah.
And
I
I'd
know
been
exactly
saying
what
it
you're
wrong
talking
the
about.
entire time I was there. I stayed at the pub, and I stayed in a nice little room upstairs, and it was just really, really nice. And you know, it goes up into the mountains, and it's all foggy. I went in winter, or just out of winter. It was cold and wet, and it was beautiful. And that was probably my favourite. Like, I bought a little narrow gauge set while I was over there as a reminder, and yeah, I think that was probably the best or the nicest or railway I've ever been to. I guess if I had to pick one, it's up there. Like, I don't want to say one out of everything, because every railway I've ever been to, I've had a great experience, and it's been really enjoyable. Like, I can catch Puffing Billy, and I know I'm going to have a good day. Or the other day I went on the VGR again for the second time in a year. A couple of years. Oh, forget about COVID. And I had a great day. Like, you got a first class ticket, you go out on the balcony, the observation car, great. Like, I think all of them are great, and I'm not going to say there's a bad one, for example, but I think, if I have to pick one of like great experiences, Festiniog Festiniog Welsh Highlands was probably one of the standouts. I mean, it was like being in Middle Earth, but with a train. Like,
Wow.
It's just these huge, big hills, rolling landscape, and these, like, all the photos are on my website, but there we go. Yeah, I'll just pick that. I'll take the Festiniog.
Yeah, beautiful part of the world Wales is. I've looked into the Festiniog myself. Definitely on my to-go-to list at some point.
Absolutely. I can't recommend it highly enough. Like, I don't know, I think you can catch a train there, but I rented a car and drove around, and it was tip top. And because like Lake Bala is not, I think I'm saying it wrong, it's Welsh. It's the weirdest looking language that's still pretty close to English. I think I can read German better than I can read Welsh. And then, I mean, that was a couple of miles away, and there was just this beautiful little locomotives they're really old. They don't have cabs on them or anything, and and that was just down the road. And then there was another slate railway I went to while I was there, and it was all just the Welsh narrow gauge stuff. Just if you're gonna make a trip, I reckon that's so far like the kind of mecca that I've ever found. Like, I've been to Japan. I went to Japan a couple of years ago with work. I was only in Tokyo for like 5 days. I went and saw the Shinkansen, and I saw, Tokyo Metro and stuff. And I was like, this is cool. Like, this is real now. I saw some of those luxury trains, and like, I didn't get to ride them, but they were there, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. But nothing really, got me like the Welsh Railways did. I think that was probably the best.
Something about how little engines can do it. Like I was saying before, there's an appeal of steam engines, but the little ones, the smaller. That's probably why Puffing Billy down here is so popular.
I was just about to say that. It's like, look at why Puffing Billy is so popular. Like, when COVID wasn't a thing, you look at the tourism industry for Victoria, for Melbourne, like, they smashing it. I mean, I realise that they get a government backing and everything, but there is a reason that everyone wanted to go there. I mean, don't get me wrong, proximity to Melbourne, excellent, but certain charm. I kind of wish there was more of it, because, like, I mean, what's the next nearest for us is Bellarine or Redcliffs. I suppose they're narrow gauge, but but narrow gauge, a different narrow gauge. Like, you look at Bellarine, they're quite large. Like, they're West Australian locomotives and things like that, and quite big still. Like, some of the South African stuff is enormous, but anyway.
That's all good. So, you have some pretty interesting merchandising. You sell Victorian Railways beanies and badges and hats and stickers and things. Where did you get the inspiration for that stuff? How did that come about?
That's an easy
just a
one.
bit of a shameless plug for you.
Oh, thank you. No, so I remember going to for example, Newport Railway Museum in probably the late 90s when it was ARHS, and that museum used to have a really reasonably good, from memory, I was only 10, but reasonably good gift shop, and you could buy enamel pins, and I think that's what it started with. Is I've still got them all. Like when I started digging through all collections and things like that I had, I found them, and I've got all these locomotives and things like that. And I was like, oh, cool. I wonder if you can still buy them, and you can't. No one was producing them, so I said, how hard could this be? And it is quite hard, but it's fun. I like producing it, and I like seeing it. Like I see some spotters out every now and again. They've got pins on or a hat on, and it's really rewarding. I'm like, oh, you're getting the enjoyment that I got out of it. That I made something, and there it is. Like someone else really enjoys it. So I guess that's where it came from. Is remembering that years and years ago, and even when I was in the UK, you'd go to a heritage museum or a railway tourist railway, and they were still doing enamel pins. I went to some model railway exhibitions. You could buy enamel pins. You could buy railway-related merch, be it hats, beanies, shirts, hoodies. Like I watch some American stuff, and you can buy like an embroidered bomber jacket. Not that I'm going to do that, but like it's quite a normal thing. Like it's readily available. Like, well, why don't we have that? Like, people clearly want it. Like, I'm more than happy to buy... I bought some shirts from Thelmere when I was there. It's not last year before. Right before COVID, we went. And they're great shirts. They fit well. They look cool. But I'm like, well, Victoria doesn't have any, and they're not that readily available. You can't buy some of them off their web store. And I was like, yeah, I want to make some stuff for everyone else. I try to keep the cost down as much as I can, make it affordable, and yeah.
That's awesome. Because, like, I've noticed as well, like, other, like, not railway YouTubers, but, like, just normal YouTubers, they'll have, like, a shirt or something with, like, an inside joke that only that group of people will understand. I just thought it was kind of interesting that you just like, well, I'm not going to put, like, my name, Will James Railways, on a shirt. No, just go with, like, Victoria Railways badges and beanies and things.
Someone said that to me. It's like, oh, why don't you have your own branded merch? I'm like, who would? No.
Yeah,
I couldn't envision going to a model railway exhibition and see someone walking around with my name written across the back. Like, Luke Towan kind of nailed it on that aspect, because he's got Boulder Creek Railroad, and I bought a Boulder Creek shirt, and you know, that's fine. Like, it's pretty broad, but like, yeah, I couldn't have my, and that's the thing. I don't regret it, but going with my own name, might have been, on the merch side of things, not the best idea, but it is what it is. And yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't have my name plastered across a shirt. Like, it'd just be...
I mean, people are still buying it. I mean, I've bought, oh, look at that. Oh no, look at that.
Full collection, I believe you have.
I think I've got the hat, the beanie, 2 glasses, a pin, and the Hitachi pin as well, actually. I mean, it's just cool to have, I reckon.
Yeah, well, I think it's fun. Like, I like it. And it's weird how it's crossed a couple of demographics that I didn't even realise. So, my merch is stocked at a store on Chapel Street. Now, there might be a few people who disagree with this, and I'm not going to go into it and things, but it is a store that sells street art paraphernalia. There we are. There's an easy way to put it. Or not easy way to put it. But they stock it. They stock my merch. They stock the beanies and some pins and some stickers and a few other things. And it's weird, like, these people who are into an art form. I don't know how much I can go. I don't know.
Paraphernalia that wear these things.
Yeah, they love it. There's a large amount of people who have bought it that are street art enthusiasts, and I didn't even think about them, and they want railway merch, and it's really odd.
Yeah, really interesting. Really curious.
Like, all of a sudden, I've got all these followers who are not your typical Gunzel or rail fan. They're into that other aspect of railways, and I'm fine with it. But I don't want to get into it because it's a very hot topic. But yeah, so it's weird that because they're all like, oh yeah, I want Met stuff. Like the Met was a big influence for them, and yeah, so it's crossed a demographic.
It might be a thing of if they're older, for example, with the Mets, it might be something for a thing of nostalgia for them, or
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely,
it's Melbourne. It's
spot on.
Yeah, there's very iconic things with Melbourne, and like, oh, the Met, that was cool. Oh, I'll wear a beanie of that and show off to my friends or whatever.
Absolutely. Like, I've got people from work bought a bunch of beanies, and people I didn't even think would never in a million years, if they said, oh, who would buy this? I wouldn't have picked them. And they're like, oh yeah, I'll grab that. Yeah, I grew up with that, and I want that. And that's great. Fantastic. It brings them some sort of happiness. That's great. But yeah.
I think it's awesome that it has that real broad appeal. I mean, one day, because my girlfriend will often join me at the club sometimes when she's feeling brave enough, I put the beanie on her as a joke, and she's like,
right,
this actually looks really cool. I'm going to keep it on. And she did, and I didn't get it back.
Oh, no. Isn't that happens to all my clothes? I don't know about you, but yeah, they all disappear like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's a really good hoodie. Oh, well, there goes that. Yeah, weird appeal. But great appeal. Like, good on, like, that's
weird
awesome.
appeal. It's probably more of a fashion thing. That's what I'm trying to get at. More of a fashion thing than it is, I'm a fan of this.
Potentially.
It just looks good. Yeah.
That's fair.
So what would we typically see in a Will James railway fleet in terms of model railways?
My fleet it's all Australian. It's mainly Victorian HO scale. Yeah, mainly Victorian. It's mainly what I grew up with. So there's a lot of orange and grey V-line, a lot of the maroon and blue V-line. There's West Coast Railways. I just bought a D3, so that just threw out all that I was going to say. I was going to say, from like the 50s, but D3 is like 1910? Something?
They're pretty old, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I haven't written the show notes for it yet, so I haven't done my research. Yeah, I mean, but it's 639, so that's...
Oh, which 639 did you get? The black one?
I got the black one with the red. I should have bought the Canadian red one, I've realised. I've seen the Canadian red, and I was like, I should have...
I bought the Canadian red one.
I should have brought that. Oh, well, I've made a mistake. I'll live with it. But yeah, it's mainly everything that's run in Victoria. There's a little bit of South Australian, a little bit of... I've got some Western Australian railway stuff, but it's what ran here, so like the L's. So majority Victorian, all Australian. I do have, some Welsh narrow gauge, and I've got some Japanese N scale. It doesn't get run. I just bought it on holiday. I've got some O scale wind up. It's mainly it though. What I collect, I guess, on a day to day is mainly Victorian HO. It's all DCC, or it's going to be DCC. I try to buy sound, even though my wallet does not agree with it. It is a big money pit, but yeah, that's mainly what it is.
Yeah, and it mainly consists of diesel locomotives and stuff, right?
That's only because I can't afford the steam engines, mate. Like, I mean, all that's been available for the last the last forever has been brass. I mean, now we do have affordable steam. I mean, that even though it's every time I say it, especially the people at work, I say what the Australian railway models 38s for $100. That's ridiculously good value. At least that's my 2 cents. I know my video's not out yet, but spoiler alert, I think they're fantastic. Like, that thing can pull a full brass rake around our layout, and it doesn't falter. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to fix with it, which is why the video is taking so long. But yeah, as for ready to run steam, it's not affordable for everyone. I totally understand that. I mean, the cheapest I had for ages was an R-Class that I bought secondhand, and it still cost me $500. I just bought the D3, like I mentioned, it cost me $800. Like, it's not... Yeah, the diesels, on the other hand, I mean, you can pick them up. I mean, you can pick up a DC model for a couple of $100 and throw a chip in it for, if you collect DCC, you throw a chip in it for not much. And if you want sound, it doesn't cost that much more. It does. It adds up pretty quick. But yeah, that's why it's mainly diesel, is because it's been ready to run and they're affordable. I mean, Decision bargain bins at Caulfield and Sandown have been a blessing in a way. Like, a lot of those locos have been pulled out of that bargain bin. Majority is diesel, but in the last 12 months, in the last 4 months, I've bought 3 steamers, a J, a 38, and now a D3. And I'll buy a K. Actually, there's a few Ks I want, but the money is the problem. Like,
That's right.
It's like, these would be great. And I'm like, that's more than most people's cars cost. Like, I can't just do that.
I reckon it's awesome that we're going to start seeing some more ready-to-run steamers, Victorian steamers, on the market. I'm really hoping that Australia Railway Models has some good stuff in the works though too, because they're really good for a starter.
I think what we'll see in the next few years is some more affordable things come out. With Australian Railway Models bringing out the 38s, and considering how popular they've been, like they've sold out. They sold out the first one. I don't know how the Streamline is going. I think it's nearly done. And then there's another one on the way, which seems to have fallen by the wayside a little bit. But I guess that's due to manufacturing.
I believe that one was another unstreamlined one in the black livery.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
They were supposed to come out at the same time. From memory.
I thought that was the case. Because then I was actually going to buy them both, but then I looked it up and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's going to come next year. Yeah.
So I've got photos of all this advertising for it, and then all of a sudden it just fell off. Now I understand there are manufacturing issues, and that's fine. But yeah, it gets people into Australian prototype. I mean, a couple of guys at the club have bought the same 38, and they've weathered it, and it looks fantastic. With a bit of a dress up, it's even better. And that's considerably cheaper than anything else on the market. Like, I mean, your next step was Eureka, which you're looking at buying a second-hand one for triple what that thing's worth. And then you still have to modify it so it can pull anything at all. Like, they're not a strong model by any means. Or you can buy a second-hand brass one from, like, I think the last one that came out was sometime in the 2000s, and you're looking at, $2,000?
Yeah.
Oh, no, thank you. Yeah.
Going off that, I guess, are there any particular brands you're a fan of? I'm going to guess Precision, because you have a lot of it.
I do, but they're also the big manufacturer. You don't really have a choice, I suppose, in a way. Like, in terms of a favourite manufacturer, I'm not going to say I've really got one. I'm really impressed with Decision's models. They generally do not release a bad model. IDR. If I have to pick one, it's IDR models.
Ooh, yeah. That
W class that I did a review on is still, hands down, the most reliable loco I've ever bought. I mean, I think it was a reasonable price. It came DCC and sound equipped with the Keep Alive, and it doesn't miss a beat. They're whatever they're going to release next, which is the Denham. I mean, I will buy. There's no question about it. That thing will be tip top. Yeah, I think, there we go. If I have to pick one, for an Australian manufacturer who manufactures the models that I buy, IDR.
Right, yeah. I could definitely say as well that the W's are... When there's one running at my club, everyone stops and gawks at it just because of how impressive they are. Yeah, good choice.
Like, we had the prototypes for a while, like, at the club, and they were good then.
Still are now, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think nearly 2 years down the track, and... don't have to service it, just works. Plonk it on the track and it goes. Like, dirty track, bad points, just rolls over them because the Keep Alive, and it's nice and big. And yeah, IDR.
So that was part 1 of my interview with Will James. Be back again next week where we continue chatting with him. I'm pretty sure we continue talking about photography, model railways, YouTube, just all that general stuff that he gets up to.
Thank you, Lachlan and Will, for that great conversation. You can catch part 2 of that interview in the next episode of Right on Track. Before we go today, we have the first of a few exciting announcements to make. We could tell you what the surprise is, but have a listen to this clip.
You like stories, trains, and magic? Well, you've come to the right place. Shining Time Station.
I'm Adrian.
I'm Mike.
And this is Time to Shine.
I thought as a kid that the island of Sodor was a real place and that these were real steam engines that people just happened to be filming. And,
Absolutely.
You know, but that also extends to Shining Time Station itself.
How do you know what can happen? Watch. I'm going to send a train right through your imagination.
The best bit being when they ask him what he's going to have for lunch and he goes, a whole shrimp.
Oh my God. There will be train station shenanigans,
music from the jukebox band,
movies from the picture machine,
and of course, Thomas the Tank Engine.
Time to shine. Come find out why there's just something about this place.
Yes, everything you heard there is correct. The Right on Track family is extending across the pond to Canada, where new hosts, Mike and Adrian, will feature in a new spin-off podcast, Time to Shine. The podcast will cover the entirety of the Shining Time Station TV series with reviews, conversations, special guests and more. Be sure to keep an ear out for it soon. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us on episode 67 of Right on Track. We hope to have you again soon.
You've been listening to Right on Track. This podcast was hosted by Connor Jonas, Tom Parry, Lachlan Kyle, M. Taylor, and Tom Denham. The audio producers for this podcast were Jason Evans, Harry Hughes, Ashley DeGroot, and Frederick French Pounce. The supervising producers are Connor Jonas and Tom Parry. The executive producer is Tom Denham. Visit rightontrackpodcast.org for more information plus bonus material, and be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook at facebook.com/rightontrackthomaspodcast, on Twitter at OnTrackThomas, and Instagram at RightOnTrackPodcast.